Cool. And we are live. Hello, lovely audience. Welcome back to another edition of Mind Your Biz Monday. Joining me from the very beginning of the show today is both Nerd Girl Nicole Grinstead. Hello, Nerd Girl. How are you?
Hi.
And we have visiting from all the way over in exotic, I want to say that it's New Jersey, Sam Dodson. What's that?
Texas.
Awesome. Okay, I didn't want to presume.
I don't think I would live in New Jersey. Too much statism there.
That's, yes, I appreciate that. Whereabouts in Texas, if you don't mind me asking a little more specifically without doxing?
I live out in the country outside of Dallas, but I grew up in Dallas and also lived in New Hampshire for a couple of years.
Okay, got it. So you're addicted to freedom is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Very, very cool. Well, I don't think you'll get a lot of pushback from us in terms of some of those hot button topics that tend to follow certain cultural precedents from state to state here in the United States. But I think we might find that there's going to be a little bit of dissent in the audience tonight about a couple of topics related to crypto and different tribes within crypto.
Okay.
For my part, I try to stay fairly neutral. Like everybody, I have bias, right? Same with Nicole. And obviously, same with you, you know, to be humanistic.
No, I'm not biased. I'm not biased. I'm perfect. Unbiased. My coin holdings have no effect.
Well, for as perfectly imperfect as Nicole is, I'm just imperfect all the way, across the board. Just imperfect, biased. I mean, I'm told I even like my feet smell and I snore and stuff. There's a lot about me that's just not right. So you've been warned. But yeah, we got a lot
to figure it out. You know, I don't have the answer. I'm just trying to figure it out as best I can.
Well, appreciate you being here tonight. Sam, it looks like you've brought a lot of audience with you tonight. Really appreciate that. Seeing shout outs from Daniel, from Rob XRP, from Computer Tech Services, from Richter Farms. A lot of folks who are already getting really vocal. So thank you. And I thank you, the audience, for sharing the link, right? So sharing, this is live media and it's independent media, right? We try to please fight to keep this alive and at least fight to get us some eyeballs, right? I mean, outside of just a little bit of attention, we don't really ask for much, right? So,
right. So speaking of that, last week you ate your dinner on the stream. So I thought that this week it would be okay if maybe I eat my dinner on the stream and I'm eating pineapple.
Hold on, I'm giving you a close up. All right, you guys, Mukbang Mondays. We're changing the theme. It's
Dole. We're not limited to accepting crypto sponsors. Dole pineapple is delicious. I just want to throw that out there, you know? I mean, I can promote this without feeling bad about it. And I like it.
That's may awesome. Not want you eating it out of a can.
Why?
Because they want to put their product in the best light. So you might want to get a bowl next time. And then have the can setting on the shelf off in the distance. That's the kind of thing they do for advertising, right?
Then you can't see their logo.
That's why you set it on the table or the floor, whatever it is beside you.
Okay.
Or we'll get you a green screen. We'll make the entire background like a Hawaiian island.
And then you always eat pineapple in an evening dress. So like put that on too.
I'm just trying to keep it real. I'm just trying to keep it real. All right. Also, keeping it real and thinking of potential future sponsors, I burned my chin on my curling iron earlier today, and I've done that before. And this SkinCeuticals epidermal repair is really effective.
Oh my gosh! Well, that's good to know. So, you guys, we talked about it last week. Also, the crypto to gift card bridge means that any product that's at retail is totally within reach of any crypto today. Like it's kind of a loophole, right? I mean, while we want more establishments to accept crypto natively and non-custodially,
yeah,
that as well. You can buy anything technically with crypto, but maybe not directly. So I'm seeing some cons coming in. Gundy, how are you, buddy? We got a lot of proof of work fans in the audience. I should let you know as well. So you might notice that there will be some interesting shout outs and some interesting pushback that has strictly to do with guys who are like, hey, I'm geeking out over these brand new NVIDIA graphics cards. What can I mine with them? Why aren't you talking about mineable currencies tonight? So there's going to be that.
Okay.
So before we get into, Ripple and Ripple tribalism, should we talk about some daily crypto news?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's cover the news cycle. I mean,
Cool.
Never a dull moment in crypto.
Right. So I kind of picked just a few things that I thought were interesting and maybe not getting enough attention today. And the first one is an article from CoinDesk. The title, Crypto is Too Dependent on Dollars. It's an interesting criticism, and it's one that I've heard before when I was shilling a random person who I met at Home Depot.
Hey, you got to press the flesh, right? I mean, educate one person at a time.
Yeah. So, sorry, just scrolling down quickly to where I've highlighted, just the issue of U.S. Treasury debt issuance alone has had professional money managers warning this month that the U.S.'s reserve currency is under threat. That's obviously a problem, that is a problem for cryptocurrency because of the reliance on the US dollar. Is that right? So I think one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up is because just not even last week, was it earlier this week or I don't know, last week? Had to have been last week because it's Monday. We had a guest on and he was the lead developer for Haven, which is a stable coin that does have a USD backing, also has other crypto also has other fiat currency backing options, and has a BTC, a stable to BTC and a stable to gold, X gold, right? So it says crypto ecosystem utilizes the global reserve currency in almost every facet of its user experience. Crypto was built and is used by people who still work in greenbacks. That's totally true. I pay my rent in dollars. Right? Like, how do you pay your mortgage? Dollars, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's difficult also is that you pay your mortgage and you pay any other kind of a bill in dollars primarily because it's a unit of account. It's something that so many people understand. You can go literally any place in the world, the most remote island in the known mapped universe. And if there's a human there, they probably understand the exchange to US dollars.
Right. And I don't know, I think that it's significant because even if I were to pay my rent or bills in another currency, it wouldn't be pegged to an amount. It's not like I would pay, certainly pay a certain amount, 1 Bitcoin per month or something, right? Because of Bitcoin's fluctuation or because of crypto's fluctuation. So stable coins are absolutely necessary, and they have to be pegged. Sorry, go ahead.
They are, but you also need interoperability. So like that's the fundamental issue is, you've got value. People in crypto have value stored in crypto. And today, if you want to change it back to dollars, you got to pay the exchange fee. You got to manage the process all the way through back to your bank account and then pay it out. Eventually, we will have, something like ILP or a competitor that will let you send and pay. And, it's going to take all that out of the equation. You send whatever value you have, the receiver receives in whatever value they want to receive, be it cash, be it some kind of stable coin. I think those are eventually going to very much take over. And that's where we'll probably see some of the banks doing interoperability there, which is going to kind of plug in crypto to the financial system. But, eventually it's just going to go far beyond that, and it'll become kind of noise in the background in the same way as, using the internet today. It just all works together.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that before, and I definitely want to come back to it. But so one of the things that the article says is that there are no, and this ties to what you're saying, is that there are no non-USD stable coins that can compete at the level with trading volumes regularly above $5 million per day. Why hasn't one taken off yet? And someone, Conti, Mariano Conti, formerly of the MakerDAO parish, said that USD was chosen in the end because people think in dollars. And the proposal from this article is, Conti continues to say that a better idea is issuing another currency, say Euro DAI or Yen DAI backed by DAI. In other words, building on success by supporting a new stablecoin with already existing collateral. So decentralized Euro or Yen-backed stablecoins are possible, but all of this would take time. I kind of want to bring up the fact that there is a there are other fiat-backed stablecoins. It doesn't need to be developed. Seth, I'm not sure if you're still there. I can't see you. Oh,
yes, I am. I think Jitsi will occasionally, it'll mute the video of anyone. If your bandwidth is low, mute the video of anyone that isn't speaking. So.
Okay. So I don't know. I kind of wanted you to weigh in on what you think. Why are they not talking about Haven? Is it just too small that people are unaware of it yet? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's too small. And I think if we had the development team here today, right now, if we were able to get Dweeb, their lead developer, on the call with us right now, he would totally admit the same thing. That I mean, they're dealing with amounts that right now are barely just proving the concept of what they're doing. And I mean, they're making this stuff up as they go, building the plane mid-flight. It's like so many sides of crypto. They're just not really ready for mass adoption yet. In fact, they only recently dealt with some of the most fundamental game theory flaws of their system when they had somebody attack their built-in pegging system by doing internal arbitrage. Right, where they said, "Oh, you'll allow us to peg to a stable store of value like the U.S. dollar or like the price of gold," and they had one actor come in with only $50,000, which, in the grand scheme of things, it's so close to nothing. I mean, it really is negligible. Thank you for the subscription, Albert, by the way. But it's so close to nothing. It should be considered negligible on the global scale of finance. But when it comes to an individual contributor, or certainly somebody in developing countries, developing nations, like $50,000, it overrepresents what the average person has in disposable income. This one guy came in with $50,000, dropped it into their system, and then started pegging back and forth and grew his bag by 50% overnight in under 24 hours. He wrecked their coin in less than 24 hours. And they said, "Oh, thank you." Because that's what developers do. They say, congratulations, bravo, you earned your bug bounty, but we fixed it, right? So they're just not ready yet. And their market cap reflects that. And also at the age of the project, they're just not quite there yet. They're solving interesting problems, but at a very small scale and at a very, very early phase.
Okay. All right, cool. So maybe we should move on to the next crypto news that I have saved, which was, I don't know, not a huge article for us to go into, but I kind of think that this is interesting. I've seen it come up more than once in this last week. An anonymous donor saved Open Bazaar. A lot of people might be thinking, that's no big deal. Who cares? Nobody uses Open Bazaar. But I've seen people posting on Twitter in the last week stuff like, where's a place that I can sell my used stuff for crypto? I suggested Craigslist, which of course is dangerous because you would have to physically meet with someone to exchange goods. And then also you're making yourself a target by saying, I'm a crypto holder, right? So I think that maybe it's worthwhile to note that Open Bazaar is still available for now. One of the major things that they need is not just funding, but it's people using the platform. So if you're someone who wants to, sell some goods or services while you're potentially earning cryptocurrency, maybe Open Bazaar is something that you should check out.
I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to that in the live stream comments right now. The live comments, openbazaar.org, spelled bazaar as in an open marketplace, not that's strange or random. But I've got the link there. If spelling of that word is a challenge, check it out. Yeah, they're a legacy. Well, within this space, a legacy project. They haven't been around like for 20 years or whatever, but they have been around long enough that most of the cryptocurrency industry and the broader blockchain scene kind of sees that they've contributed some value. In fact, I want to say they just recently open sourced the mobile version of Open Bazaar. I was doing a little bit of homework on that. Interestingly, they call their mobile version, you know what they call their mobile platform?
No, what?
They call Haven.
Haven. Oh, interesting. Okay.
So disambiguation, Haven the platform, not Haven the cryptocurrency project that we were just talking about moments ago.
I'm curious to watch and see when we're going to have darknet markets come off the darknet and into DeFi. Like, I think that's inevitable at some point. And, I'm just sitting back with popcorn waiting for that day to see how the government's going to respond to it and how the institutionalized players that are trying to, are really being forced to move into DeFi, facing that reality, what they're going to do about it. think it's going to be an interesting show.
I think we're already seeing the beginnings of that, Sam. I think the KuCoin attacker. Yeah. So the KuCoin attacker has had a couple of addresses already labeled on etherscan.io. And it's funny because when you look up that address, when you see it present in some transactions, it's now labeled, instead of being just the typical 0x, gibberish address of Ethereum. It's now labeled KuCoin hacker. Like, he's already been essentially doxxed. The wallets have already been doxxed there. So it's fun with these open ledger systems. But on the flip side, tools like Uniswap, he's not barred, or he or she, right? They're not barred from using those tools. And same is true of Tornado Cash, a zero knowledge proof enabled mixer for Ethereum and certain tokens on Ethereum. So yeah, due to the decentralization, trustlessness, and permissionlessness of a lot of these related systems, on the one hand, where it's open, where the ledger is open, this person has already been identified, named and shamed, named and shamed. The address is named and shamed. But on the other hand, we really can't stop them, right? Not really. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot like cash. And frankly, these are good signs. These are signs of really good health in terms of game theory. If somebody who's a bad actor is attracted to it, it's a strong indicator that it should work in terms of preserving privacy and anonymity. Not that we want everybody to do bad things, but that anybody who's interested in privacy and anonymity, they can have greater confidence in it. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, I don't think that hacker is. I don't think that he went out of his way to claim any uni.
No.
I don't think so. I
mean, why wouldn't you?
You make a fair point. I mean, maybe he's got enough. They have enough time in the day to go and pick up some additional airdrops. I just think they've got a hot potato with that KuCoin project. So, yeah.
Okay. So our final piece of news before we move into, some more discussion is whistleblowers level accusations against China's biggest crypto lender, Babel Finance. So the accusations stem from a recording that was leaked from the CEO of Babel Finance saying that they, during the March, when everything crashed in March, they lost a lot of investor funds, and that they used high leverage to, gain more crypto from the market so that they were able to maintain their investors' money. So it's anonymous sources. Of course, Babel Finance is denying the allegations, even with the recording. The recording is in, I think it's in, it's in Chinese, and it's been translated. They're saying that there was too much interference in the background to authenticate the recording. That sounds similar to things that we've heard politicians in the US and other places say when they've been caught. So they got caught short during the March crash, but worked out an arrangement with Tether to repay their debt. Tether has never been tied to any kind of money laundering or anything like that, right?
Yeah, no controversy whatsoever. I feel good about this. Sam, any comments?
Tether's a ticking time bomb. I'm just waiting for that thing to explode. It amazes me that people use it when there's other options available.
Oh, speaking of Tether, we have $25 in USDT on SLP to give away.
Yeah, speaking of hot potatoes too, right? Like, please, somebody take this. Yeah.
There was news out that they've been kind of delaying discovery and trying to turn over all of their records as far as new issuances and corresponding bank deposits and so forth. And I guess it was the New York Attorney General's office has finally submitted a motion to the judge to say a week for this, 2 weeks for this, a month for this. And I'm not sure if that was approved or not, but I think it's finally at least coming down to the wire where we're going to know how bad is it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And we talked about the Tether. We talked something about Tether in last week's episode. I don't remember exactly what. It's been a week. Sorry. So the company, aside from denying these allegations, Babel Finance has also said that their investment practices were prudent compared to the rest of the industry. Wow. What does that mean?
The bar is very, very low.
Yeah, the bar is very, very low. So Babel is backed by interbank lending from people like Genesis and Tether. In the leaked recording, Del Wang is heard saying that after the crash, Babel reverted to what it termed the X plan, using clients' funds to bail itself out. This article goes more into the X plan. In the leaked tape, Del Wang is heard, the link goes to a garbled audio only, saying that the company collateralized client and investor assets and engaged in 3 to 5 times leverage trading, and mentions $4 million that was used to great effect. You would maybe think that that investors would be running from this company right now. But to the contrary, some clients aren't worried at all. In fact, one customer told Decrypt, the news outlet that published this article, that if they still want to do business with Babel, because if Babel managed to get out of trouble last time, they can probably do it again.
I think that's like the story of all crypto, right? All of the decentralized finance space and like the crazy, like however many headed hydra it's become from so many attempts at chopping it down, right? Like just keeps coming back, more tangled.
I think FedEx, there was a time where they were almost bankrupt and trying to make payroll, and the CEO took what money they did have, went to Vegas, put it on black, won, and he was able to make payroll, and we still have a FedEx today. So it happens. It's it's the Wild West in crypto, that's for sure.
For sure. But one thing he says, if they can do it again, if they can do it once, they can do it again. I wonder if the same could be said about Tether.
I mean, I think all indications are right now, Tether they've been very resilient to criticism for sure, but intense scrutiny from legislators and from law enforcement. I don't think we've really seen what that could look like yet for Tether. I don't think that they've really been put under the microscope.
I think Tether's another Craig Wright. Really.
Okay. Let's go ahead and draw that one out. Let's just really drill down, go deep on that one. How so, Craig Wright? Because that brings up some emotions.
Craig has been claiming over and over and over again that he's Satoshi and this and that. He's provided zero proof. He's provided fraudulent, tampered with emails. He's been, just caught over and over. And there's these little gaffes where he's talking about, I remember this paper I read, probably because I wrote it, when he realized it was the Bitcoin white paper that he's talking about. I mean, I put a video together taking my best guess as to who Satoshi was, and it kind of goes through and explains. There's this guy, Paul Soloshi, I think, or
Paul Soloshi,
Soloshi, who's in jail. I think he's probably the best candidate that I've seen, and that Wright probably has his encrypted hard drive, and that's what he's doing with Calvin, is trying to crack that encryption, hoping that one day, oh no, see, look, now I can move a key, now I can sign a Satoshi transaction, whereas before he hasn't been able to. So he's desperately hoping that that's gonna crack one of these days, and he will have the money. But he talks about having billions of dollars, and his suit has a little red stitching on it. It's a very nice, fancy suit. Mm-hmm. But when he wears that suit 4 times out of 5, on these appearances, it's like, wait, you've got $1 billion and you only have one suit, and you're reusing the jacket with, as a sports coat.
Well, he's trying to create object permanence in your mind. He only needs that image to be stuck in your brain long enough for you to remember it after the fact. He's not really counting on you being a particularly critical person, though, right?
Yeah,
so he's portraying that image for multiple times, and he's using the best possible suit. So I've worked with teenagers before and had to in order to gain the trust of teenagers that I didn't know, just for the purpose of what we were doing at the time. It was the youth ministry. I wasn't trying to get close to any kids in any weird way. But just so they would be like, hey, I'll even let you talk to me for 15 minutes. I had to wear the same shirt and tie. And it was like, whatever. Totally ratty. Like I looked like a bum. But the same shirt and tie over and over again for weeks on end before they started to let their guard down and start hearing me. I think that what you're saying, just my take on it, CSW, he's trying to create the image of, somebody who's successful, but he has to wear the same costume grade outfit every time he appears publicly to help you bring bring those defenses down. Like, oh yeah, he's successful because he wore that a fancy suit.
Maybe. I don't know. It's amusing to watch every time there's another leg down in that saga. I tweet about it and point it out. And with Tether, they came out saying, oh, we're 1-for-1 backed. And then they got caught out on that. And then they've since changed it to, well, it's partially backed and they don't really tell you. It's just there's all the scandal, involved in their, I don't remember all the details of it, but there's just so much shady things around that. I think it's going to implode. I think the New York Attorney General really understands what's happening and is about to bring the house down on them.
Okay.
On Craig or on Tether? On Tether.
Craig will probably end up never coming back to the U.S. or he's going to have to admit that he doesn't have the keys or something like that. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. So if we can just dwell on this a little bit longer, where I think that Craig is brilliant, whoever his brain trust is, where I think that they're brilliantly operating here. Not that I think the claims are true. They haven't been proven true, right? Like they totally haven't been proven true. But where I think he is exhibiting brilliance in his approach towards trying to convince the world at large that he is Satoshi and it's crazy because it's antithetical to the cypherpunk movement. It's antithetical to the free and open source software movement. It's antithetical to blockchain in general. It's antithetical to interoperability between ledgers, atomic swaps, things that everybody involved in Bitcoin is saying, hey, we would like this. And then other cryptocurrencies, many other cryptocurrencies are saying we would like this. A lot of what he's doing here is antithetical to it, but where he's brilliant is in setting precedent by attempting to copyright various different parts of the white paper and the code and everything else, right? Because it's not so much about what you can prove beyond all reasonable doubt. It's about what you can get in writing, right, and make legally binding on any level.
It's a short-sighted strategy because he's using government levers against an anti-fragile system, and that doesn't work.
Oh, of course, yeah. Again, it's
that. So it's going to fail. He's spinning his wheels, and how does he not realize that if he's really Satoshi?
Well, again, where it's brilliant is that he uses that strategy in tandem with what you mentioned before. It just buys him time because he can say, well, according to this document that I filed and that was stamped here or verified, received here, even if it's not actually proven, right? That oh yeah, we actually did award you the copyright, or we did award you whatever else. This is actually granted that we do acknowledge you as a creator, etc. But just saying I have legal precedent showing that I submitted the paperwork. Nobody else did. Nobody else has tried to copyright the white paper. So it's my work, right? It's even if it's just my creative work. Yeah. So it's my work. Nobody else has contested it. So it's mine. So if that just buys him time until, like you said, Moore's Law, we're already at 7 nanometer GPUs, and within the proof of work space, we know what that means for things like hash cracking. We're very familiar with the performance of hardware and what that means in a case like CSWs. Every new generation of GPUs from NVIDIA and AMD, every new generation of silicon from Intel, even the field programmable gate arrays, every new piece of silicon that hits the production lines gives him a better shot at cracking that. And so if he's buddies with somebody, Calvin Iyer, who will fund him, right? Will stake him to create warehouses full of machines. Well, yeah, every 6 months, new piece of tech comes out that they can just add to the farm. And and they know people who are extremely good at penetrating networks and at cracking passwords and cracking seed phrases. There are a few people, as you know, in the space that do that sort of thing, get partial seed phrases. So yeah, he knows he just has to buy time. And in the meantime, look like Satoshi and try to create some kind of legal precedent so he can say, oh, how dare you impugn my claim to being Satoshi? I've got this legal document here. Look, it was received by the patent office. Right. He can, all the bluster works in his favor until then.
So I would also argue that he's very aware of the importance of, or he's very focused on creating a legacy and possibly knowledgeable that there's no way that he'll ever be able to, crack that wallet or access the original, access his original Bitcoin. But if his name is repeated more times than anybody else's as Satoshi, history will likely remember him, or at least remember him as part of unfolding Satoshi. And media attention, positive or negative, seems to be what it takes to get a project off the ground. Yeah,
no, fair point. I don't know if that strategy will work out for him either. I just don't know. I mean, I think honestly, was it in the year 2140 when the last block reward is emitted on Bitcoin, if Bitcoin is still running
around?
We just don't know. That. Yeah. So if it's still around and running and the last block reward is emitted, I think very few people are really going to care who Satoshi was if it's running.
That's true. That's definitely true. So also last thing about Craig is that I've talked to Craig and really the interview went poorly. I've recently been talking to his PR agent about him coming on this show and he's considering it. So I want to make sure that it's well stated that just like any guest who comes on the show or comes to be interviewed by Seth or I will always be treated with respect. And that includes Craig.
This is true. Craig, if you're watching, we'll give you a friendly ribbing, but we'll never treat you poorly. So, yeah.
So maybe it makes sense to transition here because, so my research in cryptocurrency has primarily been focused on the development of tribalism within crypto, and the people who have gotten the most pushback from are actually BSV proponents, saying that tribalism doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because Bitcoin SB is Bitcoin and everybody else should shut up. I've considered going on one of these people's podcasts to argue with him, but I don't think he's nice to people and he's a smaller creator and I don't want to help him because he's not nice. So I'm not going to. So, if there's somebody out there who wants to treat me the way that I treat other people, then, let's do it. So
she said.
Of that, I think what?
Yeah, that may or may not get remixed.
So speaking of tribalism, before we go into it, some of the reasons why I think it matters are it prevents people from making money. It also sticks people into these groups because they're like hardwired and defined by things that they've said previously. They become associated with communities. It's very much like cult, like a cult, right? Where even if you maybe think something different, you don't want to leave because all of your friends and family are part of this cult and you're going to be disowned from leaving. This is a major problem in, human existence, and cryptocurrency is kind of just a microcosm, and that's why I look at it the way that I do.
I think it's driven by like a need to be right and to look good. And so the more vested you are in that, the more likely you are to have gone to other people and told them about it and what a great idea it is and so forth. And then if you end up being wrong about that, it means that you're a liar to those people. So that's where that's kind of what subconsciously I think backs up the cognitive dissonance and the tribalism at its core. Is people want to be right, that they pick the winner and they pick the right project. And they put blinders on, as a result of that. And they're not willing to, like on my channel, I'll criticize Ripple. And I did that a while, or actually I had I had a analyst on who we were talking through a story that he wrote about XRP and Ripple and so forth. And I showed him that from the Interledger protocol streaming payments that I get, I'm actually not taking those in XRP. I'm converting them to Ethereum. And there were people in the XRP community like, what are you doing, man? Way to set a great example. And I'm like, F off. I don't really care. So yeah, it affects a lot of people.
Okay,
yeah,
but seriously though, I mean, Sam, they've got a point.
Finances. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Sam, they got a point. What are you doing, man? I think it kind of like bears some explanation.
I mean, in my case, I've got plenty of XRP, and I'm diversifying into other projects that I think, I kind of came to realize how impactful this is going to be. Like I tweeted out today a thing about the internet remove friction from the exchange of information, and cryptocurrency is about to remove the friction from money. And the changes in our lives are going to be just as impactful as, the way we used to go to the library and look up a book through the card catalog system to the smartphone that we have today. And, the same thing's going to happen for money, but it's going to compound and build on top of what we've done with information. And so it's going to make such profound changes and things possible that have never been possible before. And I think it's going to bring people together in new ways, similar to social media and what that's done. Like you see these projects where something bad happens, or there's a disaster or something and people need help, or there's a bridge that needs to be built so some small village can start trading with a neighbor. You're going to have the ability to throw $5 or $10 through blockchain or DeFi funding mechanisms to help build that bridge. And traditionally that would be a local bond, only open to the people in the community or around the community. And all of that's about to become global. And so I think that's going to have some really profound implications. And I think we're also going to bring the unbanked into, a large portion of them into the digital world. And that's going to open up new opportunities for them. And we're going to see, everywhere with the Ripple uses the shipping container analogy of shipping, global shipping exploding 700% over the 10 years following the introduction of the shipping container. I think we're going to see the same kind of explosion in the third world countries and with the poor, as they are able to start saving and start having capital to create business and, things that weren't available to them before. Or even if they were, it was in their local government's currency that doesn't hold the value and, it is not a valid savings vehicle. They're going to have these stable coins that will hold their value and maybe even appreciate in some cases against their local currency. And it's just, I think it's hard to imagine just how profound all of this is going to be. So, going back to the original question, there's like a lot of projects and a lot of segments in that change that's coming. And I don't think it's going to be one project or 5 projects or 10 projects. It's probably going to be dozens that do really well, that address different segments, across everything that's happening.
That's awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate that. That was also a very diplomatic answer, by the way. And I apologize because Nicole, I think I stomped on one of your questions. I mentioned to Nicole before we got started tonight that I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. And no, I'm not in an altered state of mind from having taken anything, but I have consumed a lot of green tea today. Come on now. I have consumed a lot of green tea today and inhaled a lot of the vapors from, nice fresh herbal teas. So maybe I'm feeling a little loopy from too much green tea. With the cocaine maybe too.
Oh, okay. Oh, good.
Like I said, it's a family show. We keep it light and breezy.
Wait, we're not a family show. We openly swear.
That's totally true, actually.
let's not advertise as a family show.
Yeah.
And we'll have to censor, and that doesn't sound like fun.
No, also, yeah, for the purposes of YouTube, this is not for kids. Yeah.
Yes, not for kids, not financial advice. Please don't take financial advice from us.
Yeah, let me run that disclaimer. Hey, so I know you all came here to hear Nicole and for me to say, invest in XRP. We're not going to tell you what to invest your money in, guys. There's a disclaimer card. You've been warned. We're not going to tell you, we're never going to tell you to put your money anywhere or take it out of anything. It's not our job. You make your own decisions.
Right.
You know, I think
this last week, I was like, I don't care what's in your wallet, and I'm never going to tell you what's in mine. So,
out of the debate that I had with BitLord and Alex was on there, I think one of the most profound things that came out of that for my audience that I wanted them to finally comprehend was kind of towards the end where Alex was about to drop off, and he's pointing out, you know, when projects get low and they hang around a certain value for a long time, you've got a lot of bag holders there, and they're they're underwater, sitting there waiting for it to appreciate. So you're going to have twice as many bag holders come in to bring it up. And I'm pointing out, you know, all the DeFi, most of the DeFi projects out there are marketing to retail. What Ripple's doing is bringing commercial money into their asset. And that's such a profound difference to really understand. And there's a few other projects that are doing things along those same lines. They're not the ones that everybody's hyped up about and, you know, trading right now. But there are a lot of people holding them for the long term because they know where this is all going. And you know, there's such a craze going on with DeFi, and it's very much like the .com bubble. I wish more people could understand that in the end, there's going to be a handful of big winners, and they're not necessarily going to be the ones that went up 30% last week. So
sure. To ride that analogy a little bit longer on the .com bubble, I don't think agreeing with you. I don't think any of the big winners are going to be squatters either. People who just came, or carpetbaggers, right? People who came because they saw, oh, hey, there's movement, there's velocity over here, and so I better get in on it. Like how a lot of people are doing right now, or a lot of companies are doing, and old failed projects are doing right now with DeFi when they failed at an ICO in 2017 and they failed at an STO in 2018.
Yeah.
Just because they couldn't get through any kind of the regulatory system at that time doesn't mean they can somehow magically create a product that people want in 2020 because they create a token and they create liquidity on Uniswap or whatever the other platform is.
They're feature projects, so many of them, and they're blurring the architecture lines. That was in the last video I talked about how it's just such a jumbled mess right now. Eventually that will develop. But when I'm looking at projects, you know, with Ripple, you have to realize back in 2012, they were looking at Bitcoin going, you know what, this is going to have scaling problems. The transaction fees are going to be really high, and the protocol's probably not going to be able to fix it. Let's figure something out. And they did, and they've solved that problem, 2 years later. And it turns out they were right. They were proven right in 2017. You know, I also look at like what Cardano's doing, and Charles with IOHK. He's beginning with the end in mind. Like, here's where we're going. Here's what we're going to build. And these are the steps to get there. And then he's executing on his plan. There's a lot of people who think that Ethereum is just going to like swallow up more and more. It's this black hole that's swallowing in all of DeFi. I see it more as a first gen platform. You know, I make the comparison of Bitcoin to Napster all the time. You know, revolutionary, really cool thing, but came with some problems. And eventually we got to BitTorrent, which permanently solved that problem, right? And is still around and used today quite often. I think the same thing's going to happen. And like, I don't understand why you would go to a layer 2 solution just to fix layer 1 scaling when you could have an actual platform that doesn't have all that overhead that comes with all of these projects plugging in to fix scaling on Ethereum. And that's where I think like Cardano being able to basically move ERC20 projects and whatever else onto their chain, I think that's going to be really successful.
So I'm just gonna agree with you and give you some counterpoint there as well. I think when it comes to the issue of building layer 2 to try to fix problems that were inherent with other projects, a la Bitcoin and Lightning Network, and then within Ethereum, all of the proposed layer 2 solutions and networks like Matic and others, right? So Tendermint and Cosmos and all these others that have come to build on top of them because they found that there was enough utility for them. They could handle the fee structure and handle the proof of work backing with confidence, and then they could scale up to tens of thousands of transactions per second more using their own independent ledgers and their own kind of consensus models on top. I think that they were doing that because they saw that the roadmap for Ethereum to finally get to proof of stake they've been kicking the can down the road for so long that they thought, okay, yeah, it's just never going to happen. Lo and behold, they say, well, the Ethereum Foundation and core developers say, hey, you're right. We're going to focus on ETH 2.0. We're going to develop in tandem with ETH 1.0, which is our proof of work system. And now we're developing proof of stake, but we're essentially kind of reimagining it. But all of your legacy Solidity contract code, smart contracts and dApps and everything else will run just fine. And it will run with ETH 1.0 as a child chain or as essentially a shard on top of ETH 2.0. So actually just reverse. The first layer will become a second layer, and it's essentially only going to be there to maintain the legacy and to help kind of like give us a path forward and remember the legacy and ensure that we have backwards compatibility with all the contract code. So don't get me wrong. Yeah, I have no dog in that fight. I'm not like a core developer or anything, but I think that's where they're going.
The people that talk to me about Ethereum 2.0 say that even if everything goes according to plan, which it's apparently not, that's a 2 year, that's 2 years out. Is that true? Like I hear conflicting. There's people that think, oh, it's coming soon or it's going to be here early next year. What's reality? Do you know?
Just
listening in on the core dev calls. Sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that earlier today, I got a notification that there was a new video from Chico Crypto saying that ETH 2.0 is right around the corner. I didn't watch the video yet. I was, doing some other research, but that's definitely the rumor going around. I have no idea if it's true. I have no clue.
Okay.
Yeah. So, hey, Taylor, if you're watching, or Tyler, I'm so sorry I slaughtered your name. Chico, whatever. If you're out in the Intermountain West, let's go snowboarding this season and we'll chat it up. Really, seriously.
He's a big fan of mine. Yeah. Make sure you say hi for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Drama.
So maybe we all just hug it out on the mountainside. We'll just make sure we don't go any like double black diamonds or anything dangerous while tensions are high. But
hey, speaking of, if you're watching, my mom is your biggest fan. Just, I don't know.
What does that even mean?
I know, she's just like, she like has her notifications set and will like anything he says, she believes, even
he's gonna call you. He's gonna get your number, call you like, oh, your mom's my biggest fan. Big fan. Oh, your mom. So no. You gave him all the ammo. Oh, seriously, those are 50 cal tracer rounds right there. ETH 2.0. What I'm hearing from the core dev team, and they do public YouTube streams every week. It's actually a lot to keep on top of, right? Because it's we need an executive summary, right? Like we don't want to know every single improvement proposal and every single issue that's open on GitHub, right? Like really, if we wanted that, we would just go monitor all the commit history on GitHub, and some of us do, right? Like we look for codes there or changes in the code, just because it's just way easier to sift through the BS when you see like, nope, you said this, the code says something else. So sometimes that makes more sense.
Okay.
But based on what I've been able to see from the Ethereum core developers just meeting up and chatting, and then the chatter from the proof of work mining community, I mean, realistically, they stand to lose the most of having proof of stake go mainnet and having it take away their cash cow, right? It's their bread and butter. And I built this channel to the level that it's at right now, very humble, talking about proof of work mining for the small to mid-scale miner on GPUs. So a lot of folks that tune in, they're like putting in unpaid overtime to try to figure out what the best stuff is to mine. Ethereum wins the day today. And so they are always worried, when is the music going to stop? Will I have a chair? And Ethereum 2.0, it's imminent. I'm going to say that. A lot of miners are concerned about it because, they're worried about recapitalizing mining farms, right? Like anybody that has a couple $1 million to invest in that space, because that's what they know, they're worried about getting new gear. And rightfully so, because if the test nets for ETH 2.0 maintain the success rate that they've been on, it may be before 2021 that ETH 2.0 launches. And there's no strong indication that won't happen. So anybody who's saying otherwise, I'd question their motive, because I'm talking to people who are like, they've got a vested interest in ETH 2.0 not launching. And they're saying, yeah, it could happen before this year, or before next year, rather. So that's what leads me to believe that it's a bigger threat than most people anticipate. Matic, Cosmos, Tendermint, all these other systems that run on Ethereum, they only benefit from ETH 2.0 running because all the Solidity legacy code and contracts still run. So it doesn't harm them at all. Polkadot, not dependent, right? Cardano, not dependent. It's all portable over to them, but yeah.
Do you see like proof of work mining dying out eventually? I mean, putting Bitcoin aside, obviously.
I mean, eventually, but I also foresee heat death of the universe, right? Like, it's a question of timelines.
I mean, it's like what you just talked about is a perfect example of like misaligned incentives, because the miners are incentivized to have a network that's congested and slow because they make bank on fees, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, the evil grin just comes out when you say it. It's so messed up because it's true.
It is. And then the problem with it is the higher fees don't do anything to address scaling or congestion issues. So it's like you're spending money incentivizing this group to make sure it stays broken and not do anything to fix it. And so like that's, I think these newer models are solving, like that's a shortcoming. That's a 1.0, legacy thing that we've been gifted by Bitcoin because we didn't know a better way at the time. And I think we're evolving, beyond that. And I think it's, Andreas likes to talk about it as all or nothing. You're either Bitcoin or you're Visa. And it's like, no, there's middle ground here. And the middle ground is in these various consensus models.
That's hilarious because Andreas also literally just released a book on Ethereum. So shame on him.
I mean, I'm not his biggest fan. He finally blocked me after I've done 2 videos breaking down his arguments and just ripping them to shreds. And so anyway, but I think that's where it's going. I don't know what the optimal consensus model is. I don't think there is one. It's probably going to vary amongst different projects and specific to what they're doing. But I see that really as the future and more of this, Cardano's doing it a certain way. Ripple's doing it a certain way. The XX network is doing it a certain way. And I think they all have benefits to their various approaches.
Yeah, totally makes sense. The proof of work, to your point, Adam Back, his work on Hashcash was an absolute gift. Satoshi very much singled out Adam Back's work there. And that is very much where all of the broader proof of work scene takes its inspiration, if not direct instruction. And it's kind of funny, actually. Adam Back, he commented on some of the ring signature and other privacy tech within crypto notes like Monero recently. It's always kind of nice to hear from people like him. He's not, he's not God, but he is kind of an oracle in the space, right? Like some of these people are like, they getting their approval means a lot, right? But but with proof of work, leading into different consensus models, Blackcoin debuting proof of stake 3.0. Nobody ever talks about Blackcoin. Like, does that name even ring a bell for you?
I've never heard of it. No.
They were essentially the test net for proof of stake 3.0. And that third iteration of proof of stake, It's like, cool, it went off that hitch, and now it's like basically chain dead. It was on a few exchanges, I think upwards of like as late as last year, and had some value moving through it for a while. But then, anybody that was interested in proof of stake, any coin that was interested in proof of stake said, cool, it's working. Like most of the attack vectors addressed, and they just ran with it and said, cool, version 3.0 of proof of stake is good enough for us. Maybe we need some additional checks and balances to make sure that we don't have any other double spend vectors or any other, dusting problems, dusting attacks, anything else that is typical of these distributed networks. But it largely solved. And I mean, that was like, 2013, 2014. This is right, like in parallel with ETH first launching, but you don't know who they are. Nobody knows who they are.
Okay.
Right. Like nobody remembers.
Yeah. So I kind of see institutional money's coming in, and I think CeFi is going to plug into DeFi in the short term, and these exchanges certainly are going to, are onboarding some of these features and things. Gosh, I'm forgetting where I was going with that. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, it'll come back to me in a minute.
Yeah, no, apologies. I interrupted there just to chat briefly about Ethereum because you brought it up and you mentioned that with some of the rewards that you're receiving, that you are choosing to diversify into Ethereum. I think that's brilliant. It's one of those projects that, while not perfect, they're showing good faith, right?
So I think as that utility moves in and that's happening and underway, it's going to be make or break for Ethereum, and either it retains its position as king, or it gets divvied up and amongst the vultures circling, right? There's a lot of Ethereum off ramps being built, and I think that's going to be an interesting kind of transition to watch and see how that unfolds, at least for me.
Sure. Nicole, you had a lot lined up, and I apologize. I've interrupted a lot.
No, not at all. Okay, so because I do have a lot lined up, I think that we should move into this kind of tracking Ripple tribalism. And I want to first thank Matthew Hamilton for commenting a few weeks ago. I posted, I have this job that I do that pays me, and then I have this like crypto tribalism research that absolutely no one pays me to do. But like I just do it, because I want to. And Matthew Hamilton jumped in and said that I should look at the Ripple tribalism, and I told him that it was actually something that I had been intending to look at for a long time. He put me on the track that we're going to start to go down right now.
Okay.
Absolutely sure that it's clear that I'm giving him credit for a lot of the research.
Okay.
So I have my own questions that come from there. So his first direction to me was to look at a 2013 Bitcoin Talk forum. Let me see. Bitcoin Talk forum that
where Satoshi's saying Ripple's doing something interesting.
No, where Matthew N. Wright posted, the co-founder of Bitcoin Magazine, posted that that someone, his name Trading View, Trade Fortress, was incentivizing people to change their posts to say Ripple is a scam, and the incentive was 5 Bitcoin, which at the time was 500 something dollars. So the post was then changed to say that the reward, it was only if you were on page 1 of a discussion forum, but the reward changed from 5 Bitcoin to 1 Bitcoin. What's evident from the discussion forum is that the anti-Ripple tribalism began long before this discussion, because there are so many people on there saying, I would do it for free, or I would do it for 0.1 Bitcoin, or there are a million criticisms of Ripple that, why would anybody need to pay for this? At some point, Trade Fortress comes back in and says, hey, I never DM'd anyone saying that I'm going to, I never PM'd anyone saying that I'm going to pay them. Okay, there's a link where he posted, say there's a link to a forum where that person posted saying that they would. So yeah, the PM never existed, but there's evidence that this person, and there's evidence in the transaction that people were paid to change their page one posts.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's even someone, Wormbog, who before it's even revealed that this post exists, comes in and says, I think that Trade Fortress just has a fat wallet of BTC, and he fears the success of Ripple will lead to the devaluation of Bitcoin. Wright then asks if anyone in the forum knows what the word scam means anymore. And that's something that Seth and we used to do a segment of the show, or not a segment, a different show called Scam Buster Saturdays, right? Where we just kind of objectively broke projects down. So I don't know, that's a separate note. So there's a point where Matthew Wright said, he says that he's sick of the cultism in Bitcoin, where people are so easily manipulated, constantly following a leader for political reasons. This anti-Ripple campaign, to me, seems like a power grab in itself. Something desperate people do when they're scared their own project currency can't stand on its own two legs aside from anything else. I don't know where I'm going. Sorry, I'm a little bit lost. I lost myself. So, okay, what's apparent to me is that the tribalism didn't begin with this forum, but where it gets really interesting is the next point. So Matthew points out that there's an article from Bitmex saying that Ripple is a scam and that there's patently wrong information in the article, yet the article continues to be referenced.
Mm-hmm.
And Bitmex refuses to recant any of the information.
Yeah, they did a research paper. That's probably what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've got the paper open.
Yeah, where they talk about like Ripple having these keys and you can only get them from Ripple, and it's all bullshit. The reality is what Ripple's doing is very much more complex and involved than what most of the other crypto projects are out there doing. So there's a lot of people who don't really understand it. Even people that are smart and really know their stuff in the crypto space, they just don't understand it because the cryptocurrency is just a vehicle, a mechanism that they use, XRP, that they use to facilitate these payments. But there's this whole other world of interfacing with the banks and the regulators and making all that stuff work. And it's a lot more involved than I think people understand. And then there's a lot of headlines that come in that get misinterpreted both ways. So there's people that will see an announcement for some kind of new payment service or something along those lines, and they're like, aha, that's Ripple. And of course it may have nothing to do with Ripple. And then you get the opposite of that as well. And a lot of times it's hard to really say exactly how it's developing. We have a lot of hints as to Ripple's involved with all these companies and they're doing these things together. And of course we've got SBI, which is a huge banking consortium, and they're on the board at Ripple and on and on. So there's every indication that this is going to be used. But at the same time, there's all these competitors like Swift, like Quorum, trying to save themselves, trying to save their little plantation and keep everybody on it. And that gets interpreted as a Ripple killer because people don't recognize the inherent limitations of the other solutions. And, that's primarily the whole idea of correspondent banking, where you're parking money in financial institutions around the world. That's incredibly expensive, incredibly hard to maintain, and on and on. Ripple eliminates that. And like most of the other banking solutions still rely on that model. And that's what creates the hierarchy in banking. A lot of people don't understand that. And keeps the big banks at the top while the little banks have to go to them to get these services because they can't afford to, have this global correspondent banking network. And Ripple stands to change that. And a lot of these guys are threatened by it. And now they're coming off the sidelines with these various solutions, trying to, effectively retain what they've got. And they offer marginal improvements, but they don't fix the fundamental problems. It's like, if we change, if we're still on proof of work, but we're, we've got a nice GUI for it now. Or I don't know what a good analogy is, but,
sure. Yeah. It's a shiny turd. No, we get this.
Exactly.
We've interviewed a lot of projects, right? And had a lot of anonymous devs hop onto the show and say like, "Oh, you don't understand the changes that we're making." And it's like, no, I think maybe we've heard it once or twice. Maybe there are 6,000 coins. You cannot possibly be that unique. Yeah. Definitely hear you there. And yeah, however you want to phrase it, right? Garbage well wrapped, still trash, right? Like, or whatever you want to say. Let's get off some of the talking points that I think your audience is very used to you saying, and some of the talking points that for us we're very, very used to talking about as well. We maybe once more. Hey, audience, if you're not using Signal, use it. It's free. It's open source. It's encrypted. Protects your privacy. Use Jitsi tools like this, like we're using, to be able to use encryption for your video chats. Don't contribute to databases.
I use it, but there's some questions about the whole move to the cloud, and is it really all encrypted like it used to be? Well, have you seen the kind of the stir about that? Do you know?
Well, SSL is broken fundamentally. I should say SSL has fallen. Anybody who works in the security space is talking more about other protocols as opposed to just SSL. But as far as encryption and encrypted services, one benchmark that I use is to ask, are people whose lives are at stake or whose livelihood is at stake vis-a-vis darknets or people like Snowden, do they endorse it or do they use it? And Edward Snowden has used and endorsed both Signal and Jitsi. So, yeah. And now, granted, I should say also, we have not enabled an encrypted channel for this particular chat because we're broadcasting every word anyway. So I'm not too worried about it. But if we had to, I'd much rather be in the habit of knowing how this tool works and, having the muscle memory, so to speak. I'll reach for Jitsi first.
Cool.
But
okay, sorry, I have a question. A lot of the criticism from the Bitcoin Talk Forum, and this is going to, be a really elementary question, I'm sure, but a lot of the criticism from the Talk Forum says that Ripple was intended to be and pitched as an open source project, but that it's not. So, is it open source now? Was that promised?
So there's two components of it.
Mm-hmm.
There is the XRP Ledger, which is like the Bitcoin network, and XRP is the native digital asset on the XRP Ledger. Mm-hmm. And then there's RippleNet, which is the software that Ripple wrote to use the XRP Ledger to facilitate payments for the banks. And it goes well beyond that. It plugs into the banking infrastructure and is the signaling layer for the payment to follow it through, basically. The XRP Ledger is open source, decentralized, immutable, trustless, permissionless, all the same features of blockchain. It just, instead of using proof of work, it has this consensus model that's a little different. RippleNet's software is proprietary. It's closed source. It's permissioned. It's, all the things that Bitcoin or that the XRP Ledger is not. So what you have is this permissionless system, just like DeFi plugging into CeFi, CeFi plugging into DeFi. It's kind of the same concept happening. You have this trustless, permissionless network. RippleNet rides on top of it and utilizes it, but RippleNet itself is proprietary and software for the banks.
Is that different from what was originally proposed or sold?
No, I don't think so. They realized, like, the people who created Ripple were working on Bitcoin. Like, they were Bitcoin fans. They just realized it's got some shortcomings. So, like, they didn't set out to abandon the principles of Bitcoin. They set out to address the shortcomings of Bitcoin within the idea and the framework that Bitcoin created. And I think they did that. And then, to say that they were conflated is a little like, why would they say that? Because Ripple, the company, didn't exist. So like they went in, they came up with the idea of using consensus, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And then they created the blockchain. They're like, okay, now what problem does it solve? Or what use case can we apply this to? And that's where they came up with Ripple, created the company, gifted the tokens, and the rest is history.
So on the gifting of the tokens, that's another kind of pain point within the discussion forum. It seems like there's a lot of accusations that the tokens were distributed just kind of to their friends, and that there was, I can't remember exactly which year it was that it changed, where the Ripple Foundation had to start disclosing who it was that they were distributing tokens to. But was there a time when there was, misallocation of funds or something along those lines?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there was Roger Ver wanted to buy like 300 grand worth of XRP in the early days. And they're like, okay, just KYC. And he's like, no, fuck you. I can go to the exchange and get it. No worries. If you want to go that route, I'll just buy it off the exchange. They're like, no, come on, sir, we'll help you. And that's FinCEN went after them for that. And that's why they got fined and had to close the Ripple wallet, at least as I understand it. Let me see. I don't think it's been misrepresented.
Okay.
So
one question that I had I guess the real problem that Matthew Hamilton had with this Bitmex research was that they claimed that 5 magic keys run an XRP node. Yeah, which he said is complete fabrication, right? So
it is.
One question that I started to think is, who's behind Bitmex research? So I looked it up, and it's Bitcoin Manipulation Abatement LLC is the plaintiff behind the. That's a different thing. Sorry, HDR Global Trading Limited is a company registered in the Seychelles, founded by Ben DeLow, Britain's youngest self-made billionaire, Arthur Hayes, an equities derivatives trader. And the market maker for Deutsche Bank and Citibank's ETF businesses. So I have another question here, which is, are Deutsche Bank or Citibank RippleNet customers?
I'm pretty sure that Citi is. Deutsche Bank, I don't think we have that confirmed. Ripple has a Marjan Delatine who used to run the Swift GPI program for Swift, which is what they created to try and compete with RippleNet. And she left and went to work for Ripple. Her focus is to talk to and work with the central banks. And she might be German. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure like she's been over there talking to these central banks, to these major banks. And, like, I know they've heard of it. I don't know if they're a customer or not. I don't think that's been confirmed. Bank of America is a customer, they're same kind of caliber, and that is confirmed.
Oh, no, I just meant specifically because of this person's, status as a market maker for Deutsche Bank and Citibank's, I was just curious. So that the third founder of Bitmex is, trying to look at my notes, Samuel Reed. And looking at Samuel Reed led me to this kind of discovery from just a couple of months ago, where there's a current class action lawsuit against Bitmex alleging racketeering and fraud, among other misdeeds. So Bitcoin Manipulation Abatement LLC is the plaintiff behind the lawsuit. Prior to filing a suit against Bitmex, BMA filed the suit against Ripple. I was curious if there's been any news or development in that case that you're aware of?
I wasn't even aware of that. No, I know Ripple's under it's a security lawsuit from this Stack guy that lost 130 grand buying at the top in, 2 weeks time or something. And he wants to now claim that he did all this research and Ripple just deceived him into buying this security. It's still working its way through the courts. I'm not sure about other lawsuits. There have been several. Most of them end up dismissed. Like Bitmex, I think they have these huge leverage shorts that you can take out against XRP, and they've, been very negative. There's people that are always trying to play people, in whatever way they can. And if they've got a crowd that hates XRP and they want to create these options for them and make money off of them, trying to short the XRP market, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, so I kind of thought that this was an interesting point, given what's happened really recently with the Link, right? It was everyone's favorite project, just skyrocketing, and then all of a sudden there's this, I don't know, libelous claim from a company that was partnered with Chainlink, and then the fact that there's a class action lawsuit against Bitmex, I guess, kind of. I don't know, tied for me. It made me think, like, why didn't anybody, I don't know, why wasn't this more discussed? I know that misinformation that Bitmex published was discussed somewhat at the time, but I don't know. I think that there's something here.
There's a lot of companies in the space. A lot of them are building stuff on Bitcoin and Ethereum that really don't like XRP. And I think that's testament to the threat that it represents, to really bring in mainstream finance into the crypto space, and for XRP to be that bridge asset to go to, wherever you need it, wherever you want to go.
Okay, so I think, Seth, this was something that you wanted to bring up. There's been a lot of talk about, Ripple partnerships and XRP deals with major banks, and then it's been, a certain amount of time that nothing has really materialized. So why, I guess, why is there still this?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna let you finish, but first let me interject a little bit. I object strongly, young lady, to the use of that kind of language. I did not want to ask those questions. I did kind of want to direct the conversation towards something a bit more nerdy in a moment, with regards to the web monetization, which I think is a brilliant initiative, but that I'm struggling to see partnerships form there. And I think that to sidestep the questions of banking partners, and to sidestep the question of the Citibanks and the B of A's and the Deutsche Banks and the Barclays of the world, because Satoshi made it extremely clear, explicit in the white paper that he, she, or they were very libertarian, and in the follow-up conversations that they were very libertarian, a la Ron Paulism, right? So the Ron Paul flavor of libertarianism. Which is to say that large banks and large banking institutions are abusive, not just because of the fee structure, but that they're just abusive because of, like you mentioned before, you put it very eloquently, a misalignment of incentives. For example, no individual person wants to open up a personal banking account or checking account at Wells Fargo anymore, and they haven't for years, because it's just been sort of known that they don't really bank individuals anymore. They haven't for a long time. They're really more for businesses and even small business owners. If you don't fund your account with enough, you go to Wells Fargo and you are just going to always feel unseen and unheard. They're just not really there to service you. Not really. And Ron Paul's thing for the longest time was always, look at credit unions maybe. Let's visit gold. Let's talk about all kinds of other options before Satoshi released the white paper. And before any of all of that thought coalesced into Bitcoin, Ron Paul was promoting these ideas. I know you remember, because I'm sure you were tuned into it.
I actually interviewed Ron Paul.
Yeah.
Back when he was running for president in 2006, whatever it was. And
we got robbed. We all got robbed because we didn't have that option, right? To hear him properly debate. We got a few debates then, but we all got robbed. And then same again in 2012. I mean, I almost cried. I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy, because we're not going to see him run again. It was just really sad. But these concepts in Satoshi's white paper and then in follow-up communications, it's abundantly clear that she or they were very anti-bank.
Mm-hmm.
Very much anti-institution. The web and the democratization of web technologies and Web 3.0, they tie us all globally in a way that banking never has. And at this point, I'm sorry, there's a moat. It never can. It can never catch up. So I had a
catch up to what exactly?
To the impact of the web. Banking, it just hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it just hasn't. So I can talk to somebody in a chat room or a forum from any remote area of the world, provided they have any internet connection. I can even just send text. And if I can send text, I can send a payment address and vice versa. And even if it's off ledger, even if it's off chain, a transaction can then take place after that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that does things that no bank has touched. And we're not even talking about the unbanked.
And
right?
And that's because of friction in the payment system. And that's what Ripple's removing. I'm an anarchist, so I would go even further than Satoshi. But here I am talking about Ripple and XRP, this banker's coin, because I understand it's going to happen in stages, right? Like 10 years on, what's our market penetration for Bitcoin? 1.3%? That's not exactly, taking off like wildfire or catching on really.
Well, and the tribalism that's built up around it is abysmal, right? People talking about citadels and I'm going to have so many Bitcoin and screw the rest of humanity if they need it. And it's like, well, okay, then how are we going to create an economy around this? Circular economies around Bitcoin are kind of they're a cool dream, but yeah, based on behaviors so far, like you're saying, and adoption so far, not realistic. Yeah.
So I just want to add, so like what I see happening is Ripple kind of being the gateway that brings the banks into the digital era, that helps them transition and interconnect and interoperate with these crypto networks. And eventually you're going to have your Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum balance in your checking account, right? And it's going to work just like cash would. The bank will be the exchange for you, or it will be an exchange that you're banking with, right? That's another possibility here because that's happening as well. But at some point, you have to break into the like mass consciousness of the normies to bring them on board. And I don't see Bitcoin doing that organically anytime soon without some, major global hyperinflationary crisis where they're forced to learn or starve kind of thing. I see it happening in stages. And I think once we can get the masses over to, knowing what cryptocurrency is, having some and using some, and we have at the same time built all of this interoperability that will allow them to go from there into DeFi, I think that's the route it's going to take. And I think there's people like Alex that would disagree and think that Ethereum is going to grow organically, even though Bitcoin hasn't done that, that it's going to grow organically and take over and all the normies are going to come swarming to it. But I think that's just short-sighted of how the money is held by the institutions. They're not going to just let it slip out of their fingers. They're going to do everything they can to retain that power. But at the same time, it's such a game changer of an idea that they're going to be forced to address it. And so just like the internet, the government would probably love to can the internet and get rid of it, but they can't do that today because there's too much business that depends on it. And crypto is going to go exactly the same way.
Yeah, I think, with cryptography too, it's crazy. The legislation that's taking place here in the United States anyway. And, and it's the, the torchbearer, right? For the rest of the world in a lot of ways, right? That in the EU when it comes to legislation, but legislation, how it's kind of schizophrenic. On the one hand, you got legislators talking about like, we need to ban all encryption. And on the other hand, we literally just had crypto custody for FDIC insured banks legalized.
Yeah. Well, so that's Brian Brooks. I don't know if you've been following, if you know who he is or what he's been doing, but he's like directly responsible for all the movement, or I would say 90% of the progress that's been made in the crypto regulation front because of him. And like having watched his some of his interviews and some of the phrases that he uses and some of the arguments that he constructs, I guarantee you he's read Mises or Rothbard, or the guys may not be an anarchist, but he could very easily articulate anarchist philosophy to me, and I would probably agree with it. So like he gets the whole freedom and liberty thing, and he's also gets it's the government, we got to do something, and how do we meet these two together? And I think he's doing an incredible job and making a lot of progress. And at the same time, Ripple is, Garlinghouse has come out and said, he's the CEO of Ripple, has come out and said, we've had to throttle back and tell customers no, they can't use it because we don't have enough liquidity in the markets they're trying to use. And so they've since, I don't know if you've seen the promoted ads from Ripple lately in your Twitter feed, but they've just been really pounding the pavement with story after story along these same lines, because they're trying to like apply the pressure to get this done and make it happen, because it really is, it's holding things up. And the US market's really fallen behind to the rest of the world and even China, and they're playing that drum as well.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of concern, right? A lot of consternation in the Senate and all of the special committees there, all the special subcommittees. So to jump back, I promise I will actually form a proper question here, because I mean, as you're aware, there's so much that informs these conversations, and there's a reason that we could all be streaming from so many different perspectives, kind of like polishing all these different facets of the crypto conversation and the fintech conversation. We could be streaming full time every day, right? All day. Not to mention the ideological considerations, right? So question time. I will firm this up. But two different things that come up because you brought up the banking system and being a banker's coin. We have legislation that now permits FDIC insured entities to custody Bitcoin proper. And all forks, right? All relevant forks. Anything that they're willing to assume risk of, they can custody because they have that FDIC backing, and apparently with the same limits, right? Which I think will be strange, right? Like what happens when you put exactly $250,000 of Bitcoin and it rallies 50%? Where's your FDIC insurance
you're only
now?
Covered up to that. I think is how it works,
right? Yeah.
Or
so So who in the right mind would do it? But the question was actually web technologies, web monetization, and the Interledger protocol. Where do you see there being a lot of participation there, and is it entirely dependent on Ripple or the XRP Ledger? And I'm gonna have to admit a bit of ignorance here.
That's a good question. Interledger protocol, Ripple wrote, and there's a book called Competitive Strategy Analysis, which is kind of their playbook for. It's a PhD book for how to become the global standard in technology adoption, and it gives you this kind of strategies for, it uses the Betamax VCR comparison and as a case study kind of thing. And that's been Ripple's playbook from the beginning. It talks about not trying to take all the pie for yourself, sharing with partners, building open standards, an open ecosystem, allowing others to come in and take part. So they wrote the ILP for, to interface with XRP, but it's really a connector of different blockchains, kind of the stuff that DeFi is doing. And they had Codius, which was a Turing-complete smart contracts platform, like 2 years ago, I think, is when it was. And so like it was ready to go. The problem was nobody was on there. There was Kava and one other company, and Kava ended up having to pivot because it was a ghost ship. And what I found out was that's because of KYC AML. There was really no way to KYC AML your customers on ILP. So like the whole thing just kind of never got off the ground, right? Today, that's starting to change because you have like Uphold is a connector that I use to convert my XRP streaming payments into Ethereum or Digibyte or whatever. And there's other companies that are doing that. But after they kind of ran into that brick wall, what I think they did is went back to the drawing board and said, okay, how do we solve this problem for ILP? So PayID just came out. Are you familiar with that at all?
Not familiar with PayID, no.
Okay. So Ripple created this open standard PayID. Think of it like DNS for your crypto wallet at the very lowest level. So I can, Matt Hamilton went and hosted a PayID web page that was his PayID address on his GitHub account. So, just a real small snippet of code at the base level. And it's like, you give someone your PayID, they use that in a PayID enabled wallet, and it will go and look up and say, okay, Sam's Bitcoin address is this, or Sam's XRP address is this, and then it will send that back. So it's like a simple DNS query. There are other modules, though, that you can add to it to where you can incorporate these various open IDs standards that are out there and forming up to handle KYC and AML. There are modules that you can add to where I only am going to give out my payment at my wallet address to these people, to these addresses, and they have to sign a transaction first to prove who they are before I will even tell them what my wallet address is. So, it's a really flexible open standard that will solve and address the KYC AML issue. The other thing they did is they worked on open payments and brought that into the ILP as a signaling protocol, a payments protocol to interoperate with, so that you have tokens, and it does basic simple invoice and payment type stuff, but you can also set up, if I want to subscribe to Netflix for a year and pay the $8 a month, I can say between this date and this date, which is 365 days, once a month you can come in and you can debit my account for $12 or $8 or whatever it is. And if you want to specify that in Bitcoin, you can, and then you add a little buffer for changes in the valuation of a cryptocurrency. But the difference is I'm in charge of that token. Like, I still own it. And if I decide 4 months on I want to cancel Netflix, I don't have to call them up and tell them I want to cancel. I just revoke the token and it's done. So I think those two components are going to work together to solve that problem, not in the way that DeFi would solve it or the way that the cypherpunks would choose to solve it, but in a way that works for the retail community, for the commercial community that's out there handling most of the volume today. And like, that's another, it's a difference in mindset. You have these projects that are out there building for retail investors, and you have these projects that are out there building for enterprise. Cardano, Ripple, they're building. And I sound weird.
I was offended.
Uh-oh.
The echo died. He'll probably be back on.
Yeah, we might have to start a new stream because everything's streaming from his computer.
Oh, from his computer? Uh-oh.
Yeah, unless you have it open right now and you can see that we're still on.
I do. It's not playing, though. Hold on.
Yeah, so, all right, you guys might not be able to hear me through our chat, but I am still streaming and my voice is still coming through.
Yeah, no, it's still playing.
Yeah.
Oh, it is? Okay, all right, cool.
We're good.
All right, keep going.
Yeah.
Wait, what was I talking about?
I think you were talking about Interledger protocol, and you were starting to get to. I think you were starting to get to your point.
How they're building for enterprise, and like, that's the difference. So that's where I think, even though it's fallen behind, and DeFi looks like this very promising space that's going to be all consuming and whatnot, I think the established companies out there are going to want the safe bet. And I think Ripple and ILP and projects like that have been developed specifically to bring them on board are going to be the ones that are used.
Yeah, and it's something that I've heard you say before, which is not necessarily that, it's because you love bankers and you want to be a banker and you want to support the banker coin, right? It's like you can see the writing on the wall. You know that this is the direction that things are going, and you want to make sure that you have money so that you can make real changes in the world when this happens, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Roger Ver, despite people that don't like him for one reason or another, because
he's sponsored he's sponsored almost every giveaway we've ever done on this show.
Yeah. He puts his money where his mouth is. And when I was part of Free Talk Live, he was running ads for Memory Dealers, which is his business in Japan that sells computer hardware. He was running that on Free Talk Live, but he's like, the odds of finding the right customer to hear that ad are not good. And he's just like, you know what, guys, keep the money and just run Bitcoin ads. And so that's what they did. And he's the person that sent me, along with about 50 other people, my first Bitcoin over Facebook.
There you go, guys.
Jump out, then right back in. Oh, there he is.
Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we were still streaming the entire time, as you knew. My mic was going out to our audience, but not to you guys. So
okay,
I didn't want to accidentally say something that you didn't hear, but then the audience is like, "Oh, so rude."
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so sorry, I just want to jump because I know we're going on really long, but I want to talk a little bit about conspiracy theory. And it's something that I've heard you talk about with not so much Ken, but with Rice when you appeared on his show. And there's this discussion about, I think that this was towards the end of the Ken part. It's like part of the argument that the Bitcoin price is related to energy and that, and it's not efficient and it's centralized, and because of the mining taking place in China, part of the argument about free energy making mining more profitable, but isn't the potential for free energy related to the conspiracy of Nasara and Gasara? And isn't that theory related to Q and XRP?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'd say no and no and no, I think.
Okay.
So Nasara Jasara, I've actually gone and found the document that's supposedly the law that everybody's going to pass, and I read through it, and I'm just like, oh no, this is not. They're forgiving all debts, apparently, except for farmers. They only get a portion of their debt forgiven, and then there's this caveat, and there's supposedly this huge pile of money that's going to make all of this happen. And if you look back at the history of it, like, to me, it's wishful thinking is the category that I would put that into, and people are welcome to disagree with that. The Q stuff, within the XRP community, we have our own like Riddlers, or we had them for a while. Now there's one or two that are kind of doing that sort of stuff. They have some interesting correlations to what Q is talking about. So that has caught my attention multiple times. Is there a direct connection? I don't know. There's also so much dot connecting that I think is probably taking things too far. Like they're seeing connections where they don't exist. And at the same time, there's a lot of people that have data and news announcements and press releases and stuff right in front of them about Ripple, and they still don't see the magnitude of what they're doing. So I think it's a little bit on both sides. Does that answer it?
Kind of, I guess. So in my mind, I'm connecting Nasara Jasara with XRP, but you're saying that that's a mistaken connection.
Yeah, I'm saying I don't think Nasara Jasara is a real thing that's going to come about.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. But
I think
XRP as a solution for, global financial problem isn't something that's really going to come about too. So I guess the reason that I'm seeing correlation is it seems like my friends who discuss these things on Twitter are most commonly, XRP army. So yeah, I guess.
So like in terms of XRP, best case, it becomes this global bridge asset. It doesn't replace the dollar as the reserve currency. I think the dollar is going to go away. Like it not go away, but is going to lose its status as the global reserve currency and be replaced by nothing if XRP is successful. Does that make sense? Okay. So like that's best case. Worst case is like they never are able to get traction and it just fails and the company goes out of business. And then people decide, does ILP continue or not? I think that's a really low probability of happening. And then there's of course, all the stuff that Xspring is piling on top and bringing in as far as utility and from gaming and from, all these other companies. With ILP or web monetization, they are, they have the thing with Imager. So when I go to Imager, because I'm a Coil subscriber, all the ads get turned off. There's another like big publishing conglomerate that they announced a deal with that has some massive proportion of like media consumed on the internet, at least within their space. And they're talking about doing something with Coil, same kind of thing, turn the ads off and provide this premium browsing experience. So, in my mind, at least, it's all happening. It's just not at the speed that we would like. And I think that was a question from earlier, like, why hasn't it happened yet? Regulations, the banks aren't ready. Ripple's made some missteps. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. It'll happen when it's happened. When it happens, I think we're getting closer, certainly.
Got it. I've got additional questions, kind of follow up for web monetization, because I think what I asked was about the impact of the web and the impact of being able to make payments on the web. And I think where we went with the conversation was KYC and AML. And for me, it's kind of non sequitur. It kind of is. Okay, so I'm gonna appeal to the anarchist in you, Sam, and ask, as far as being able to just send a signal and know that it can be received and know for yourself that you're a good actor with good intentions, preparing to carry out good acts. The impact of web technologies, the impact of communications protocols specifically, I won't say the whole like code is law thing, because that's just tired, right? Code is code, right? Code is code, speech is speech. Sometimes code is speech if you can get it, if you can get a judge to agree to that, but code is not law. But I mean, it sounds like you're a fan of voluntarism and anarchy. Yeah. So just knowing that you can send a signal to somebody else, why does KYC matter?
So in the case of the ILP, it's a permissioned network. So if you want to connect to, I can go out, I can download the software, I can turn it up, and I can be a connector. But if I want to peer with anybody else that's going to give me any kind of capabilities on the network, they're going to want me to be KYC AML compliant, right? Could we end up with DeFi coming in and doing some kind of smart contract for streaming? It seems like, yeah, why not? Again, like when I look at Ripple and why I like it and think it has such huge potential is not because it's going to set everybody free from the fiat system, from the banks, from all of those control structures and mechanisms. It's more so that it's going to bring the mainstream and introduce them to crypto and then make it easy for them to take the next steps to leave all of that stuff behind. And as much as I would like it, I talk about on the show, if there's a red button on my desk that I could press to end government, like I've already pressed it. Is it gone yet? Kind of thing. But the reality is it's going to take steps and intermediate steps to get there, at least in my mind. And I think Ripple is one of those steps. I think Cardano is a step beyond that because they're not like out actively working with these businesses, banks, and financial institutions and so forth, but they are putting in some of the parameters, some of the variables and things to handle KYC and AML for those institutions that want to use it, kind of thing, if that makes sense. So like Ripple's no, you're going to be regulated or you're really not going to participate on our network kind of thing. And Cardano, I think, is kind of the next step where, if you want to do the KYC AML thing, you can. We've built it into our protocol. Here you go. So that's another kind of step in that direction. And eventually, I think all that's going to become irrelevant. And, why are people going to hold a dollar that's this depreciating asset that the government's printing trillions of dollars a year of, when you can put your money in real value or in a sound money and retain its value? It's a no-brainer that's going to happen. Demand for fiat is going to die in that instance because we'll be able to seamlessly move between fiat and crypto. That's what one of the things Ripple is bringing to the table. So, okay, I need fiat again to pay taxes. That's fine. Or to buy this thing in the store, but the store clerk's likely to want crypto anyway. So, eventually that's going to get completely cut out as well. And then how does the government wage endless wars when they have to live within their means and they can't, print $6 trillion to go bomb some kids?
Well, but how? So I'm gonna take that same argument because Sam, I think you've articulated this so well. How can the government wage endless wars if their incentives to obtain our taxes are outside of the KYC AML system? And why aren't we engaged in building systems that force the government's hand to ask more politely and to account better for the tax money they take? No taxation without representation. But right now, it's as we say in Spanish, is the point of the pistol.
They have guns and they don't have to ask. Like, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And they have.
So then why give them systems that then voluntarily just make it possible?
Because the corporate money, where the money sits today, is in that regulated market. And until you build a home that accounts for that regulated market, that money's going to stay there. We will be, putting some kind of, hyperinflationary collapse kind of thing aside, 10 years from now, we might be at 4% with Bitcoin. But with Ripple, we could get 80% of the, the money that's out there in these traditional financial institutions into crypto within the next 10 years. I don't think that's unreasonable.
That sounds possible. So again, you articulated it very, very well. In 10 years, Bitcoin has only gotten so far in market penetration. In about 8 years, roughly, which is the timeline you communicated, how far has Ripple gotten to addressing what you think is an actual addressable market of 80%?
So like, what do they have in the works now?
What have they achieved?
As far as a company using XRP?
As far as the total volume of financial transactions that are captive right now, actually using it, not side projects that may be used by a partner in the future, not dry ink even, but actual transactional volume.
Okay. Brad's published those numbers. I don't remember them offhand, but I can say they've been growing by triple digits the last few years. So, they're still fairly small, even as a percentage of the XRP, total XRP trading volume. ODL is still fairly small, but the number of messages on RippleNet just keeps growing exponentially, doing very, very well. And the value transferred, same kind of thing.
Okay, cool. No, that's really, really cool. Again, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not like a Blockstream developer or like an Ethereum core developer, but like Nicole said, we like to keep things fair and not tribal, not engage in tribal affinity, and let anyone get away without cranking the heat up a little bit in the hot seat. So just curious about that as far as just holding everybody to the same objective standard of time spent on task and what they actually achieved in that time.
Sure. The key in my mind is building liquidity. So they have a team of 11 people, I think it's 12 now, that are working on solving that problem. And, compared to the DeFi projects, there's nothing that even comes close to that, because the problem that Ripple's trying to solve is orders of magnitude larger. I mean, they have customers that could send crypto's entire market cap over one payment rail in a single day, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the magnitude of the problem that Ripple's here to solve. What is crypto doing, along those lines? And I think it's nothing. That takes, though, tremendous liquidity. That takes a developed marketplace. That takes all the tools that those market makers use, the options trading and so forth, to hedge their position. And it's developing. It's taken longer, I think, than Ripple thought. It's taken, David Schwartz said he thought we'd be there by now, and we're not. There's regulatory snags, and it's slower, and it just takes longer to do stuff in the regulated space than it does in DeFi, because anybody can just go out and build it, right? So, but I think.
So I'm gonna. I apologize for the interruption here. You mentioned something, just that then in your estimation, the problem that XRP or that Ripple is trying to solve vis-a-vis XRP and all of the other sides of development that Ripple is working on. The problem domain that they're trying to work in is just very different. And I will totally grant that. Of course, it's very different. You're familiar with the case study of the grain purchase that in Russia that was done to circumvent sanctions?
No.
Okay. So that was $3 billion worth of Bitcoin that was used that time.
Okay.
It was an interesting case study, right? Like for me, it was like, oh, cool. Like, normally think about it, but the only thing that was sanctioned was the currency, not the grain, apparently, not the product. But $3 billion.
Oh, so they skirted it. I gotcha.
Yeah. They just said, oh, cool. Well, this is we'll call it a local currency if that helps regulators feel better and keeps people from going to prison, whatever else, or to the gulag, like worse. But we're going to buy $3 billion worth of grain from Russian farmers in Bitcoin. They did. They successfully did that. For my part, also, thousands of dollars from either sponsors or just from people who I've been doing business with. I mean, I don't ever want to have to set up a wire transfer from Deutsche Bank. I just don't. And I didn't have to, because somebody from Berlin just sent me a different cryptocurrency instead, which at that time had favorable fees.
For a one-off solution or a large value transaction like that, you can get away with that. You sit somebody down in front of a terminal and they have to execute some trade orders and so forth. If you're trying to do 5,000 of those a second, it's another story. All of it has to be automated. It has to connect end to end between the banking infrastructure through the market and so forth. And like, that's the difference. Bitso used to have a Bitcoin-based remittance product, but it never got off the ground. And Ripple is like their largest trading pair, has been for a long time, surpassed Bitcoin because of the ODL stuff. And Daniel Vogel, I think, is the CEO who kind of talked about that when he was on with Masari. And it wasn't getting traction. It wasn't user friendly enough for people to use, but they thought that was the answer. And it's really, the answer has been to connect the places that the people are going today to send remittances. So, they plug into MoneyGram, they plug into MoneyRemit and all these other little money providers, and they improve their process and make it cheaper for their customers. But like the average day laborer who's got, $1,000 from the week trying to send money home is not the person who's going to log into to Binance, put that into a bank account, somehow get it deposited on Binance so they can buy Bitcoin so they can send it to their relatives on Bitso so they can log in and sell it and then get the pesos. It's too complicated. So like that's where, again, it's just these strategies of building bridges and bringing what's out there today into crypto versus trying to get people to defect from the existing process.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, and again, that's why I think that it's fair to say that the problem domain that Ripple operates in is fundamentally different. But I'm going to push back on what you said by saying that what cryptocurrencies, what the problems they're trying to solve vis-a-vis remittances and just peer-to-peer payments is not important. I would counter that in the aggregate over time, depending on the absolute state of finance and geopolitical tensions in the world, it may well absolutely eclipse the larger systems. The legacy systems, as we see things, the situation deteriorate. That maybe that's the prepper in me, just saying like but frankly, right now I'm worried about having enough ammo and dry goods. That's the way the world is. That's where my mind is.
They're talking about food shortages in China already. Like I'd be happy to see that. I think you're giving the normies too much credit to their resourcefulness, right? Like they're just not, that's why they're normies. They do what the government tells them and they watch the nightly news and they believe everything that's on it. And, they don't see the big picture. They don't understand it. And they're believing what the state is telling them. So it's going to go there eventually. I have no doubt. I 100% agree with that's the road we're heading down, where DeFi takes over everything. Fiat dies. I follow the Cliff High's WebBot reports for years and years. And what he talks about, what he's been talking about for years is, or what his data was showing, is that the dollar fails and they come out and they replace it with something, but that doesn't really work. And it just kind of goes away and then it gets replaced by nothing. And that nothing, I think, is going to be crypto. What time scale is that happening on? I have no idea, but I think that's the very likely route that we're heading down.
I think you're right. Also, I think black swan events, I mean, you can't schedule those, right? They just happen when they happen. Is why preparation is so important. But yeah, black swan events, they have that weird like force multiplier / accelerator effect, right?
I think too many people, and it's sad, but are just going to be helpless because they've just done absolutely nothing to prepare. I mean, how many people open up their pantry and they don't have any, they have 2 or 3 days of food in there. Like, that's crazy right now. Why would you do that?
Yeah. So I apologize. I think I steered us that direction because I agree. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Don't skimp on the dry goods. And the water filtration systems. But yeah. So I mean, and I know like where you're based in the world or in the country, even there's just so much more of an emphasis, right? Actually drilling well water on site, being off grid. It's not even a question. It's just sometimes a necessity, right? Depending on where you've built. Have a buddy out in Tomball in Houston, and some friends out in the DFW area. But I'm drawing blank on exactly where it is. It's one of these, not a suburb, right? Okay. Yeah, you don't suburb when you go outside of the city there. So I can definitely appreciate that sensibility, right, of drilling your own well and being off grid and deciding like, what do I really need versus, the level of comfort I would need to be able to operate if things got truly austere. But yeah, I'm curious about that because I mean, I jumped in just to give my own take on that, because I think that there is, on the flip side of cryptocurrencies and blockchains in general, fintech in general, if sides of the market or sides of the developer community aren't building those systems that are extremely resilient, even if it is just the geeks, right, that become the sort of like financial oracles to normies in the future, I think that I mean, your mind was able to conjure up a scenario in which you'd have to live under austere conditions because you even see it where you live, right? People there think that way.
Let me add on, let me share this, and I think you'll kind of resonate with it. I think what's happening with DeFi and these governance tokens and all of the staking and yield farming is we're seeing the beginnings of decentralized banks, and these governance tokens are almost like preferred stock or a seat at the board, right? To where the people who are holding crypto right now and understanding the power of staking and manage to make it through all of the the scams and the hacks and so forth and survive unscathed with their crypto intact. I think they're going to be in a position to kind of become the new banking elite, I guess, in a more decentralized way, without the elite part, but just they're going to do really, really well because they're replacing the banking system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I'm curious if we actually have questions, guys, from the comment section real fast. We have not invoked the comment section because...
Let's give away $25 in Tether while we're here, because I know we're going on really long. Also, I've been holding on to this Tether for like months and it's losing value.
It's true. It's pegged to dirty fiat.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
So get it out of my wallet, please, someone. I don't know what you want the rules to be.
Well, why don't we do this? Sam, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your generosity in being on stream with us for so long. Do you have comment section open on your side?
I do.
Would you mind just selecting a question that you think has merit and then go ahead and engage that question? And if they're still here, then Nerd Girl can gift that person $25 in Tether on the SLP token network of BCH.
Oh boy. Okay.
Even if they're not here, they can just contact me.
It sounds good.
Sidechain.
And guys, this is also your cue to just like pour the questions into the comment section right now.
I'm not seeing a lot of questions, mostly comments. Most of the U.S. is still paycheck to paycheck strictly by design, thanks to the Federal Reserve and the fiat printers going burr. Yeah. They keep us poor on purpose. Why befriend the banks? There's a question. That's a pretty good one. So I think do we have a system that does that? Yes. But I think the mistake that people make is assuming that all banks are the same and that the alternative within the banking system is the credit union. And it fails to recognize that there's this hierarchy within the banking system because of correspondent banking. And that when Ripple comes in and removes that friction from the banking system, that it's going to create this level playing field, and that the small credit union in your little town will have access to the global financial system in the same way that Chase Bank or Bank of America will. And, that alone, I think, is going to create more options. Then we also have, what does it mean to even be a bank? That's changing completely because you have exchanges that are becoming banks. Uphold, they are, doing some of the same things that banks do. And what it means to be a bank is going to change and look drastically different over the next 5 years. So I think that's kind of mindset tends to throw the baby out with the bathwater, assuming banking hierarchy is flat. It's not. Assuming the traditional definition of a bank is going to remain unchanged. It's not. So, I think we're in a time of a lot of flux and change. And the reason these exchanges want to kind of gravitate towards banking is so they can access that pile of cash that's within the regulated system. So to me, that's the key, is it's bringing the regulated money into crypto rather than trying to find enough defectors to keep the bubble going.
Okay. That's awesome. And that's a well-reasoned response. So Gundy, I'm gonna put some words in your mouth, buddy, and I'm gonna try to interpret and advocate a little bit here. So just to play Gundy's advocate, I'm going to say it's not so much the banks, it's the custodians. They screwed it up before, and that's why the subprime mortgage crisis led us to the events of 2008. And now, more recently, we've seen subprime lending with very similar characteristics, just not in that same loan category, lead up to the current day's events. Subprime loans for cars, of all things, like cars and other consumer-oriented debt. Subprime loans, just approving people for whatever they want, which is why everybody has an oversized 4K screen and a fancier car than they should drive.
I have two.
What kind of Texan are you? You don't own your car's cash?
Two 32-inch 4K screens. I love it.
That's awesome. So I'm going to just advocate on Gundy's behalf and say it's more about the custodians. Look, we bailed them out. Doesn't matter if we call them banks, and doesn't matter the scale. They were the custodians, and they went and did the same thing all over again in a different asset class or in a different loan category, different financial product category.
Because they can get away with it, right? And they know that they can get away with it. That's why they do it. We just had Chase go down for rigging the precious metals markets since they took over from Bear Stearns. 100%. They've been accumulating all the silver while shorting the paper silver markets in an attempt to drive down the price of silver so they could accumulate more and eventually do a short squeeze.
It's like on the individual contributor level, you look at that and you're like, all right, oh no, there's a big guy. Like, oh shoot.
Yeah, well, but they get caught for this and they're like fined a few $1 million for something that's probably going to profit them in the billions and already has. And so it's like, what incentive do you have to ever, do the right thing and just try? The incentive is to not get caught. And blockchain's going to change that because it brings some transparency, and it's
but you just outlined in a scenario in which it wasn't about getting caught. It was about the incentive being to get away with it and still be able to shoulder the burden as a cost of business, shoulder the fines as a cost of business.
And in my mind, DeFi is the solution to that, right? If it's a smart contract I'm operating with, there's no incentive to do all these shenanigans. It's already spelled out, and I know what I'm getting. I know, I know the terms and so forth. I think the automation of this space is what's going to solve that problem, and I don't see it ever being fixed while it's in the hands of the state, and while the banking industry is in bed with the government, and the two are really inseparable, or I guess they can't regulate each other because one depends on the other for a stable society. If the dollar goes down, the stability of the U.S. government falls into question, right? Like, will they survive if it gets bad enough?
Yeah. I mean, I get that's particularly tricky, right? I don't think we're the beneficiaries in this conversation. We're the beneficiaries of first world living because of military might. Like, there's no question about that.
And the reserve status of the dollar. Yeah, that's why they can print so much.
And they're inextricably linked, right? Yeah, both. Yeah. Like they're linked.
You had Escobar in Narcos just wander into the president of Mexico's office and be like, "Listen, motherfucker, you're going to do what I tell you. Congratulations on the telecom deal. What was that? 10 billion. I have $150 billion or a trillion five in your banks, and I'll pull it on Monday and you'll be fucked. So if that's what you want, then don't listen to me." I mean, it's financial terrorism, and they know there's nothing they can do about it. And they're all in bed. Like, where did Muchin come from? Goldman Sachs. He was part of the whole mortgage robo-signing scam.
Yeah.
And now he's in charge of the U.S. Treasury.
He's as slimy as they come.
You need to know.
Yeah. No. Well, and then again, all the cronies, whatever else, like Giuliani. Why couldn't he repeat his success in Mexico City? Because nothing he did in New York, first off, was the reason for the decrease in crime, and then also to your point, he had no leverage at all. He couldn't get his hands on the money at all. So yeah, no, I get it. And it's frustrating. That's the part where I am a little frustrated. System. Yeah. I don't know how we untangled that web. But as far as entrusting the custodians, they failed us. They keep failing us. We give them more money. They fail us more. We give them bigger amounts of accountability or responsibility rather. They fail spectacularly. And the accountability is only commensurate to whatever the government wants to make a show of.
The difference is in the world where crypto's a reality, okay, even if the banks are doing custody, fiat loses its demand. And as a direct consequence of that, at least in my mind, the effects of money printing are going to be much more immediate because there's less demand to soak up those new dollars, right? So the fact that crypto is sound money, if they're going to play their games and manipulate, and of course they will, however they can get away with it, there will be a day of reckoning, and the government, you know, even if they do come and bail them out, they're going to do that with fiat that far fewer people are using, and it's going to drive inflation far sooner than it does today.
If they control the on-ramps and the off-ramps, though, they can use whatever asset they have control of. And if they are enticing banks to custody the cryptocurrencies, even the strongly decentralized cryptocurrency networks, then they don't need to disrupt proof of work or proof of stake or any other consensus model if they hold the keys, right? Like if they fully custody the cryptos, then they already have anything of value. So they can use whatever they have their hands on. Like if we were, reverting to some crazy alternate universe, right? We just decide that, we're going back to shells, and we put all the shells in the FDIC insured banks. Well, Uncle Sam now has access to those shells, so he can fund whatever he wants with those shells. And we just get a nice slip of paper in the form of a bond. Like, hey, thanks for being a good citizen and supporting the war effort. Boom, here you go. You're so great.
But thanks for the shells. But he can't make more shells. And like people aren't going to trust that. That's another thing that's happening.
But he can commandeer more shells and just give us an IOU.
Okay, but that's the change that's happening. People are understanding that there's this additional component, I guess, to money that can accompany it. Signed transactions and proof of funds, kind of that's the transparency that will exist because of crypto. And if they start handing out worthless IOUs that aren't backed by, and provably they offer no proof that they're backed by coins that they actually custody, people are going to abandon that for crypto that does, or for a custody solution that does do that. I can go to insert shitty exchange and put my funds
there are many
and just trust that they've got these, and they're not gambling with customer funds like we opened in the news segment with. Or I can go and put my money on Uphold, where they have an independent accounting firm. There's a web page on their site that shows current funds that they have in reserve versus what's issued on their exchange, and I can see, wow, these guys have 100% of the things that they say. Right. So you're going to have those options, and the market will decide what's important.
Yeah, I mean, totally agreed there. I think if there's custody that the government gets to touch at all, again, you phrased it so well. They have guns. They can use force. Yeah. If we ever make the mistake of giving them anything valuable, they can just keep it. So you really framed that very well. I appreciate that.
And I would add to that, that's the role of privacy coins. So I'm a huge proponent of Monero. I think what XX is doing is going to be the equivalent of going from Bitcoin to XRP, of going from Monero to Praxis or the XX network. I think it's a really smart, this is David Charum, and he's behind the project. I think what they're doing is really smart. And I think that stuff is so important because we need a way to have these anonymous transactions, because without it, it really is this dystopian paradise for the statists, because they get to track and trace every little thing, and they can. oh, sorry, no, you're not approved for KYC AML, and you've been effectively unplugged from the system. And if there's no cash alternative, what do you do?
Well, in today's current climate, we'll make it even more relevant and scary enough for people who are watching. Oh, your child was in a classroom with a known COVID positive patient. Mm-hmm. You didn't get them immunized. Your family won't accept the vaccine. Well, we know from contact tracing that they came in contact with somebody. Oh, you didn't. Well, you were KYC AML, so we know exactly who you are, and mm-hmm. we know that your funds are good. You just don't get to access them until you do what we say.
Yeah,
get that vaccine.
Yeah, exactly. It's a control mechanism. It is, and so you know, at the same time, though, their system's crumbling. They're losing faith. They're losing credibility. And it's, you know, how it plays out is kind of the interesting part here we're getting to watch.
Yeah. So. Yeah, no, agreed. This has been so much fun. I don't mean to be disrespectful of your time at all, Sam. You've been such a good sport. This has been so much fun too. Really, like we have some great guests, and I know that whatever the follower count or the subscription count doesn't know. It's not always the perfect indication, right? But we have some great conversations, and you have just you've placed a jewel into the crown of great guests. So thank you.
Sure.
Nicole, what are we missing? What?
So I just have one question to sort of close things out with. You've talked about, and we've talked about, you know, anarchy and voluntarism, and you know, being anti-bank but not being there. I've heard you talk about the importance of elevating the way that people think so that we can evolve to this, you know, new way of being that we haven't even imagined yet with the beginning of cryptocurrency. How do we elevate the way that people think?
I think it's just education. So like my Twitter account's a perfect example of that. I do crypto videos, and occasionally I'll drag, like when the whole COVID thing started, I was doing shit hit the fan prepper videos, teaching people basic prepping skills and showing people, you know, research and here's why I'm not wearing a mask and taking vitamin C and D instead. I think it's just education. And like that quote, it really centers around the world is a reflection of what we think. And so you have to change people's thinking in order to change the world. And that starts with you. You know, I listen to Bashar a lot. It's channeled information. Some people think it's weird, but whatever. I think he's got some really insightful things to say along those lines. And it's really all one grand play, experiment, however you want to think about it, playing out that we're all here playing a part in. And like it's what we're doing is really the whole point of why all of this was created in the first place, to have this experience and to, I think of it as like this, this game that's being played out that lasts multiple, you know, centuries, multiple lifetimes and whatever, as we grow from this society where we had slaves and lords and feudal lords and then governments and now we've got free information and then free money and you know, where does it go from here? I think like that's the excitement of it is we're coming in, reincarnating, doing our part to elevate the thinking and move us forward as a species, I guess.
That is poetically said. Well put, sir. Nicole, I've got a question for you for the benefit of our audience. What t-shirt are you wearing?
It's a crypto nerd shirt. It just says crypto nerd. You can get it in many colors. It comes in child sizes and adult, men, women, unisex.
Awesome. I think we even have a baby onesie with that one on it.
Yeah, we do. And we also made Crypto Kid too, which is the similar font. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, I went ahead and put a link to that down in the live comments. Go ahead and go full screen for us right here again. Thank you so much, Sam, for being our guest tonight and for dropping so many red pills, alpha, all of it, right? Like I think anybody who wasn't paying close attention really missed out as far as everything that you educated on. What is a website or a web property that is important to you to promote right now? Where should people find you or engage with your content?
Just say go to the Lifeboats. Go to YouTube, type in To The Lifeboats on the search. You'll find my channel. From there, on the channel homepage, there's links to Twitter, a Discord that I occasionally drop in, and my Patreon, and that's it. So find everything there.
Awesome, guys. And if you're watching this in the aftermath, right, the after show, then you'll see links in the description. Okay. Awesome.
Thank you, Sam.
Yep. Thanks, y'all.